Good afternoon, everybody. Well, good afternoon for me, and if you're in Eastern Standard Time, it's 12:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Dave McCrae, coming to you live from the VoiceMann Studios in Toronto, Canada. It is Friday, April the 9th, 2021. This is episode 160 of MCRAE Live, and today we're talking Saw 10 and Indiana Jones 5. Indiana Jones 5. I had built the show around just talking about Saw, and I was about to go live, and I was closing down some windows, and I had deadline up, and I was like, oh, I'm going to close, and I saw this Indiana Jones 5 thing. I'm like, what? So, I'm going through it, and I'm like, Phoebe was newly, I got to talk about this. So I was creating the thumbnail, then I saw that Darren, one of our great moderators, of course, Darren posted the link in the chat room as well. So great minds think alike. But I was like, I want to talk about this because Indiana Jones 5 news is very far and few between as of late. And we don't even know really what the hell is going to happen with Indiana Jones 5. But nonetheless, we are here. Welcome, everybody, whether you're watching live around the world, wherever you are. I want to talk about these two things. Saw 10. 10? What? Spiral? No. Saw 10. Anyway, let's talk about it. Let's jump right into it. Hope you guys are doing well. What's this? Darren Sand says, I always want to know what Dave does on the floor before he comes on the camera. He's always under the... my mixer is over here, right? And I have a couple other things over here that I'm adjusting to make sure that things are good. So it's always kind of happening, and I'm doing this. And it looks like I'm coming up from underneath the desk. I'm really not coming up from underneath. I can see how it could be perceived that way, though. That's hilarious. Wouldn't you like to know, Darren? Wouldn't you like to know? All right, let's move over to the other screen here. Hopefully the audio's okay. This comes to us from Bloody Disgusting. Bloody Disgusting. This is Brad Miska. I think it's Miska, right? Not Miska. I think it's Miska. Brad, my man, writes this article here. Saw franchise targets milestone 10th film as development is underway. Development is underway. Now, again, I've talked about the stages of film production on this channel many times. There's development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. So what is development? Well, development can mean quite a bit. It can be a little arbitrary, but what development essentially can mean anything from having a casual conversation with somebody, saying, hey, we should do this. We should seriously consider this and think about this, to, actually full on, the studio has greenlit a process of fleshing out ideas, maybe writing a treatment, maybe developing a script, maybe, perhaps. But nonetheless, that is sort of the development stage. It hasn't been greenlit officially. There is no script. It's not like there's a cast or a crew or we know what's going on. It is the development stage. Very, very early on. So what do they have to say about this? What does Brad have to say about this? It says, it's about time we start thinking of Jigsaw as one of the biggest slashers in horror history. I could see that. Placing him right alongside that of Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Chucky, and even Pinhead. I think that's probably true, although I think he doesn't get the same sort of recognition as those guys, because Jason, Freddy, Michael, and Chucky, and Pinhead came out at a time where there was a that was horror, essentially, right? And of course, it was all in the 80s. I know Chucky went into the 90s, and so did Freddy and Jason and Michael, but certainly their inception was in the 80s, and it was, Halloween 78, but you know what I'm saying. The 80s was the golden age of horror, especially the early to mid 80s. Jigsaw didn't come around till 2004. And I don't know if I really see it as a slasher movie. I mean, I guess it's a slasher film from a certain point of view. I guess it is. Certainly when you continue on with the rest of the franchise. I never really looked at the original Saw, though, the very first one, which I saw in the theater, as a slasher. I mean, again, I guess from a certain point of view. For me, it was more of a psychological horror film. I mean, that ending was great. If you haven't seen it by now, you're in no rush to see it. Jigsaw is, spoiler alert, whatever. Come on. Been 17 years. Jigsaw is literally lying in the middle of the floor the entire time. I mean, what a brilliant ending to that film, and a lot of psychological components to it. So I personally never really saw it as a slasher. Certainly I can see why you would interpret it that way, especially when you get to part 7, 8, 9. I mean, it's crazy. So I get what Brad's saying. With Lionsgate set to revitalize the franchise next month with Spiral, the Chris Rock-fronted 9th film that brings Saw 2 to 4 director Darren Lynn Bousman, I think. Bousman is how you say that, perhaps? Maybe I'm getting a little wrong. Back behind the camera, producers Twisted Pictures have already begun development on the milestone 10th entry. In their latest issue, Production Weekly lists Saw 10 as being in active development. Okay, well now that's different, right? Active development means that the wheels are turning. Things are in motion, okay? Discussions are being had, probably more than just a casual conversation, albeit serious one, right? Which could be very light early development when you have some casual conversations over lunch. There's some ideas being tossed around, but that wouldn't necessarily be considered active development. Active development says to me that it's entirely possible that the studio has said, hey, give me a log line, give me a treatment. Let's start fleshing this thing out. Give me some ideas. Right. And the studio saying that, and there's some, there's some movement, there's some significant movement, albeit early development. Interesting. Where am I here? Carry on the 10th entry, milestone 10th entry. It's caused, there we go. Okay. It's caused a bit of a flurry on Reddit as hardcore fans noted that James Wan's Atomic Monster is listed as one of the film's producers. The thought here, and this comes from people generally who don't understand how the business works. Okay. Anyway, the thought here was that Wan, who made his directorial debut on the first Saw in 2004, which is true, had returned to help develop the 10th film in the franchise. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Wan, as one of the co-creators next to Lee Whannell, has been a producer on every single entry since the beginning. Bloody Disgusting has confirmed that Atomic Monster is listed in error and not involved in the forthcoming film. And I can assure you that Wan has not returned as an active participant. So there you go. James Wan is not an active participant in Saw moving forward. With all that said, we can confirm that a 10th film is actively being developed. What that means exactly is up in the air as Twisted Pictures, and because it can be an arbitrary of a few things. It can be arbitrary of a few things. It can mean several things. Active development, again, means that wheels are moving. Things are in motion. But that doesn't mean that there is a script in their cast and it's ready to go next week. So just keep that in mind. Twisted Pictures and Lionsgate are notorious for pivoting in different directions throughout the process. It's also possible that the box office for Spiral, I get what he's saying here, but I'm sure Brad would even agree with me that it's not just possible, it is absolutely probable. That the box office for Spiral in theaters on May 14th could affect the future of the franchise. No doubt. I have very, very little doubt in my mind that they will be watching the returns of Spiral very closely, whether that's streaming, box office, whatever, 100%. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. As for now, Jigsaw's games will continue on and absolutely live in infamy within horror history. And that is true. That is true. And that comes to you from Brad Miska. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Obviously from Bloody Disgusting. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of anything beyond the first few Saw films, but it's no surprise. I mean, I say the same thing all the time, don't I? And I'm sure, it must be frustrating for, a lot of horror fans out there that, we don't necessarily share the same standards. We don't necessarily share the same enthusiasm for all horror. My jacket here is rubbing on my thing. No, I'm going to take my jacket off here because it's tend to... Oh, that's better. That's better. All right, there we go. There we go. All right. I understand that there are a lot of horror fans out there. My camera now is a little down a little bit. I just had a little too much headroom. There you go. That's better. I know that there are a lot of horror fans out there that don't, that we just don't share the same standards. I'm not somebody that, it's not that I can't watch those movies and have fun. I can watch all the Friday the 13th and have fun, and all the Halloweens, even Halloween 5, I can watch it and, you can have fun with the horribleness of it. But I'm generally not somebody that gets excited about a franchise that is entering its 10th episode. Now, I mean, if this is, an arc that was built like Marvel, where, you are emotionally attached to these reoccurring characters and there's just this long arc and, whatever, and most things are really good and well developed and fleshed out and not repetitive and redundant. And the novelty hasn't worn out. Well, again, it's not an exact science here, right? You take these things with a grain of salt. But when it comes to horror movies, we know. I mean, it's generally when you get past the third or fourth movie, I mean, you're into shit show territory. And Saw 10, really? I mean, all I ask or all I think of is just what are they going to do that they haven't done already? You just keep upping the game. It's like the Final Destination franchise. It just keeps getting more extreme, more sensational, more crazy, and more wild. It's like that show that Joe Rogan used to host, right? Fear Factor. It started off pretty tame. I mean, not tame, but relative, right? And of course, as the show went on, you got to keep upping the season before. So the stunts have to get more crazy. And now, you're no longer eating fish eggs, you're eating, bull testicles and, let's eat a giant giraffe penis. And, it starts getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and that's sort of like what happens with horror movies. So although Spiral, and I'll be honest with you, doesn't really look that interesting to me, I got to be honest, I didn't think the trailer was that great. And that's not me. That's not pessimistic. Oh, Dave, you just don't like... No, it's not. It's not. I sincerely don't think Spiral really looked that great. I'm being honest with you. I don't think it looked bad. I just think it was, okay. I don't think there was anything really about it that made me go, oh, okay. Huh. Now, that doesn't mean the movie's not going to be good. The movie could be great. Could be great. And I sincerely hope it is. I really do, especially for hardcore Saw fans. I hope it is. But I didn't think the trailer was anything great. I didn't really care about it. So, for me, I'm, the 10th Saw movie? I mean, what's going to be happening? Is Jigsaw going to be taking over the White House now? I mean, and getting, the President of the United States to play a game with him? And I mean, it just seems, I don't know. Was the last Jigsaw film any good? No. Did it do well at the box office? No, I don't think it did. Not as far as I remember. It was just called Jigsaw. It was what, 4 years ago? 103 million US. That's worldwide. Okay. Box office mojo, Jigsaw, 2017. What was the budget? Budget was 10 million. See, that's why they keep making them. Because they make them for so cheap and you guys keep going to see them. 10 million. Yeah, 10. I mean, a budget of 10 million. Okay, let's triple that. So let's make 30, 40 million with marketing. Made 102 million. Yeah, it made a profit. Not an exorbitant amount, but I mean, it made its money back. It broke even and then a little bit more. So, I mean, that's why they keep making these fucking things. But I remember when Jigsaw came out, it wasn't that well received, I don't think. Right? I don't think. So, I mean, I just, Darren, brings up a good point. Spiral looked like a dollar store 7. I gotta say, I mean, obviously that's an extreme sort of, theatrical sort of take, but the principle of what Darren is saying is true. It didn't look that interesting to me. It doesn't mean the movie's not going to be great, you know, and I don't want to tell people not to go see it, you know, because I'm not somebody that would tell anybody to not go see a movie, you know, because I think people have to make up their own minds. The only time I will tell people to not go see a movie is if they're complaining about why they keep making these films, whatever film that is, whatever series that is. Why do they keep making these movies? And I'm like, well, did you go see the last one? Yeah, I've seen every one in the theater. And I'm like, well, then don't go see it. What do you mean? Well, then don't go see it. They only make movies if they make money, you know, so don't go see it. Well, I want to go see it. Well, then don't complain. Well, I want to complain. Okay, well, then complain. Anyway, so I'm not excited for Saw 10. I mean, I checked out 6, 7 Saws ago because I just found them repetitive, redundant, and not that interesting, quite frankly. I mean, there's only so much. Like when Saw came out in 2004, it was in and around the time the first Hostel came out. And, you know, those kind of movies were like exploitative sort of torture porn kind of movies. They existed 40 years ago. I mean, if you want to go back to the early 70s, there's some crazy independent movies you probably never even heard of, you know, that are, I mean, maybe not that graphic because obviously the effects have improved over the years, but are like that. Very graphic, very violent. You know, those kinds of movies are not new, but they were new at that time. We had gotten away from that in the late 70s, early 80s, and you didn't really see those kinds of movies anymore. And then that kind of movie, that real sort of like, you know, slicing people up and a lot of blood and, you know, like Terrifier and, you know, all that. I mean, that was reintroduced sort of in the early 2000s. I mean, not that those movies never existed at all, but on a mainstream scale, we got Saw and Hostel and, you know, and then of course you had Terrifier a few years ago, more of an independent route. But there's only so many times I can watch that kind of a movie where I'm now desensitized to it. I mean, by Saw 7, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm no longer cringing and going, ooh, ow, because I've been there, done that. I mean, this is the 7th time I'm seeing this. Like, it doesn't hold the same weight that it held when I saw Saw in the theater. I was like, oh shit, he's cutting off his own fucking leg. You know, by I mean Saw, you know, 8, you're like, whatever. You know, like hey, I think you should cut off your leg. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter to me anymore. So that's why. It's not that I wish I could like every fucking movie that ever came out. I wish every sequel that ever came out to any series was fantastic. But it's just the natural, you know, it's just what happens with storytelling. When you tell stories that never end, they eventually get weaker and weaker and weaker, and the novelty wears off because these stories never end. They don't have an ending to them, you know? And so I'm not excited for Saw 10. Doesn't mean they're not going to do something great. Doesn't mean Spiral's not going to be great. But I think the series is, you know, it's overplayed, as my buddy Bruce would say. It's overplayed. A lot of these franchises are. Halloween's overplayed. Saw's overplayed. Chucky's overplayed. Everything's overplayed. You know, that doesn't mean you can't reinvent yourself and come back with something fresh. But if it's just going to be relatively the same thing, why bother? You know, and then you don't want to completely change it because you're going to alienate the DNA of the franchise and alienate potential viewers. So it's not like it's going to be completely different, which is why I think like which is why they're doing Spiral, because really what Spiral is Saw 9. It's true. That is what Spiral is. Yeah, it's a spinoff. Okay. But come on, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's what it is. It's Saw 9 in a fake. That's what it is. It's what it is. You know, even though it's a spinoff, right? And they just want to keep making these movies. I tell you, I look at Saw 9 and I'm like, you know, there we are again. We're going to play a game and, you know, but it's a different voice and now it's a wannabe, you know, Jigsaw person. And it's like, I don't care. I've seen this already 8 times, you know, and so that's how I feel about it. But I'm not an idiot, contrary to what some of you might think. You know, I am a very rational person. I mean, I certainly will. If it's a great movie, it's a great movie. And I'll be the first to say it. You know, I'll be like, hey, you know what? Spiral, it's fucking great. You guys you got to go check out Spiral right now. It was fucking great. You know I'm going to say that. But it's just the idea of this and saw 10, I'm like, oh, I mean, what are we going to do? Like, maybe Jigsaw will be eating, cow penises or something. I don't know. Maybe they'll make you. I don't know. I don't know. But see, that's the thing there. Jesker James 2 says, because Hollywood is creatively bankrupt. That's actually not true. This is the problem. And I know it sounds like a cliche, but there are so many original films with great stories that are coming out of Hollywood, whether at the studio level or the independent level, or films all around the world that aren't even attached to the Hollywood. There's a ton of them, ton of original, what would be perceived as original films. Now, I mean, the stories and the foundation of the stories may not be like original, but they're original films, right? For all intents and purposes. But they're not the movies that make the money, right? They're not the proven IPs. They're not the big blockbusters. Those are the movies that take up the vast, Jesus, when I go to any movie website and I look at every fucking second article is a superhero fucking thing. Superhero this, superhero that, superhero this, superhero that, because that's what's dominating the pop culture, right? And nostalgia, we've been in this nostalgia wave now, this emotional nostalgia wave for guys like me in their 40s and their 50s, and gals too, who have caught on to this, revisiting their childhood thing through creating Stranger Things and the Summer of '84 and these types of movies and shows that tap into that become really big and we're in this way. It's what makes the money. Original content doesn't make the money. It's the proven IPs. It's the nostalgia. It's going back to the well. It's going back to a well that has been proven to be financially profitable for them, and they continue to do it. Why? Because you continue to be there when they do it, and that's it, right? I mean, if you see a movie like take a movie like, I don't know, let me just see here. 2021 movies. So this is this year, I didn't write that. Did I write that? No, hang on. 2021. There we go, movies. Okay, so 2021 movies. Let's just see here, right? Okay, so we have Godzilla versus Kong, right? Is that original? No, it's not original, but that makes the money, right? Let's see if we have an original movie here somewhere. I'm just looking, just looking somewhere here. You guys get all excited about Wrong Turn. Yeah, you do. Let's see. There's a lot of films here I haven't even heard of. But I'm looking for something that does not really. Okay, what's this? Sentinel. What is this? Oh, it's already been released. Okay. Anyway, there's a lot, like if you just Google, movie releases 2021, you'll find a shitload of films you haven't even heard of that are coming out or that have already been out, that are already streaming. I watched a great movie the other day called Run. I'd never even heard of it. It'd been out since last year. I'd never even heard of it. Now, have we seen movies and stories like this before? Yes, we have. But again, it's original. Again, like I always say, for all intents and purposes. And I highly recommend it. It's a psychological thriller that I think you guys will enjoy. But anyway, I'm going off on my tangents as I normally do. But that's why. But I get the principle of what you're saying, buddy. I really do. But it's important to remember, it's not that there is no original content. It's just that original content, what we perceive as original content doesn't really make the money. You know what I mean? It's not something that gets you excited. What gets you excited is Jaws 4. Not Jaws 4, excuse me. A Jaws movie, a new Jaws movie done right, or another Halloween movie, another Elm Street movie, another Friday the 13th, another Child's Play, Hellraiser, Saw. That's what gets you excited. If a movie comes out, say there's going to be a movie called, I don't know, Downtown, and it's a thriller. Does that get you excited? What the hell's that? And then you see the movie, you're like, yeah, it looks pretty good. But will you go see it in the theater? No, probably not. Is it playing in the theater? No, probably not, because it can't make that. So it's just, again, that's why they keep going back to the well. It's just because it makes the money. And it makes sense. it totally makes sense why it does. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be excited about those things. And I certainly don't want, look, you're excited about what you're excited about. You love what you love. You're passionate about what you are passionate about. I am certainly not saying that there's something wrong with you or that I'm better than you or you're better than me, or that's not what this is about. It's just about looking at things objectively and saying, yeah, that's why they keep going back to the well, because we all keep going to see it, and that's why. That's why there's going to be a 9th and maybe a 10th Saw movie, and 11th and 12th and 13th and 14th. And, that's why, right? But anyway, I'm not, yeah, Kingslayer says Jaws 5, Jaws Resurrection. Oh God, yeah. So I'm not really excited about this, to be honest with you. In case you haven't caught on to that yet. Let's go over to the other screen again, and let me just move this down here, because let's talk about the Indiana Jones 5. Indiana Jones 5. Here we are. This comes to us from Deadline. Ooh, look at this. Oh, let me just hang on a sec here. I got to make this a little smaller so I can get the whole thing in there. So Indiana Jones, this comes to us from Deadline. Indiana Jones 5, Phoebe Waller-Bridge lands female lead in next installment opposite Harrison Ford. I have to be honest with you, I have never heard of this actress. My apologies, Phoebe. My apologies. Let me now make this a little bigger so I can actually read the text that's on the screen there, and you too can read the text that's on the screen. I just needed to minimize it for the headline. Exclusive. This is from Deadline. Following the confirmation at the Disney investors presentation in December that the next film was a go, Lucasfilm and director James Mangold look to have their sights set on Harrison Ford's first new co-star in the next installment of the Indiana Jones franchise. Sources tell Deadline Phoebe Waller-Bridge is set to co-star opposite Ford in the 5th installment, with Ford returning as everyone's favorite fedora-wearing, whip-slinging archaeologist. Mangold is taking over the directing reins from Steven Spielberg, who is still serving as a producer and is very much involved in various elements of the film. Kathleen Kennedy, Frank Marshall, and Simon Emanuel will join Spielberg as producers. John Williams, who has worked on every score in the franchise, including its iconic theme, will also return as composer. Now, that actually is very interesting to me. Oh, look at these ads down here. Hey, you guys want Gillette, the best a man can get. Do you remember those ads from the 80s? Anyway, I think it was, Gillette, the best a man can. Anyway, that's interesting because, John Williams, one of the most iconic composers in the history of music, certainly one of the most iconic film composers of all time, a legend. Absolutely one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. I mean, certainly you can make an argument that he is the GOAT, the GOAT. That actually surprises me a little bit because, John Williams is not young. He's quite spry. He's with it still. But when he said that The Rise of Skywalker was going to be his last Star Wars movie, it kind of felt like he's kind of checking out a little bit. And so but I don't know. I mean, he's 90, isn't he? 90 now or something? Hey, Google, how old is John Williams? I think he's 90. John Williams is 89 years old. He's 89. Okay, well, so I was close. He's 89. He's young. He's 89. He's 89, but he looks good. He looks good. He's returning as composer. So that's cool. That's really cool. I like that. Is the Gillette ad gone? It appears to be. The hope is to start production this summer, with Mangold meeting with other talent for other roles in preparation for production. Plot details are still vague on what new adventure awaits Jones, as are details behind who Waller-Bridge will play. The film is set to bow on July 29th, 2022. Waller-Bridge has had quite a run, I think is what they mean, after her TV show Fleabag became a critical darling, eventually sweeping the 2019 Emmys that included wins for Best Actress and Best Comedy Series. Since then, she has been busy on the TV and film front, serving as an executive producer on the hit BBC show Killing Eve, as well as serving as a writer on the next James Bond pick, No Time to Die. I didn't know that. I didn't know that she was serving as a writer. That's pretty cool. She is a pretty intelligent lady, if I do say so myself. She is also set to co-star with Donald Glover in the Amazon series Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Okay, so this is now I've never heard of her, but if you haven't heard of this woman, she's on the up and up. I mean, clearly she's intelligent, she's smart. You wouldn't put a lady, or anybody, but certainly, I mean, she is proving here to be a writer and executive producer. I like that. I like seeing that. So kudos to Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I'm excited to see what you bring to the table here. This is exciting. You are you're not just an actress. You're getting into the nitty-gritty of production, which can only, well, I mean, certainly it can be a hindrance, but certainly it can also be a positive as well. So that's really cool. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where she will also serve as an executive producer and writer. So she's not only a writer on the next James Bond film, she's an executive producer and writer on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, coming to Amazon as well as starring. Folks, she's a Swiss Army knife. This would make a sort of pseudo-reunion for Waller-Bridge and Lucasfilm, having voiced L337 in Lucasfilm and Disney's Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I did not know that. Where have I been living? Clearly under a rock. I did not know that she was the voice of L337 in Lucasfilm and Disney's Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Waller-Bridge is repped by UTA, one of the biggest talent agencies in the world, for those of you that don't know. Independent talent, Hatton maybe, McEwen, Penford, and Zifrin Brittenham LLP. All right, just in case you wanted to reach out and get in touch with her, I guess. Fascinating. Well, this is cool. This is, again, I mean, I don't talk a lot about Indiana Jones on this channel, primarily because there's really not a lot to talk about, but I'm a gigantic Harrison Ford fan. I actually have Harrison Ford's autograph over here, believe it or not. Let me see if I can get this for you. This is actually, oh, that's okay. Don't worry. Everything's all right. That wasn't what you thought it was. This was given to me by my sister Jill. Got a bit of dust on it. This is it's not personalized, but it was picked up as a gift by my sister Jill at a one of those. It was like a very special store that dealt with authentic autographs and things like that. And this was given to me almost 20 years ago. I'm a big Harrison Ford fan. Harrison Ford's my favorite actor of all time. And this was a great gift. And I'm sure it cost my sister a pretty penny as well. But here it is. Pretty cool indeed. There's his autograph there. You can see that. I'm sure you guys can see that, right? You kind of see it down here. Right there. And it comes, of course, with a letter of authenticity, and it's been authenticated and pretty cool indeed. And I've since seen Harrison Ford's autograph on many other things, and it does look exactly like that. So I've seen him sign his name, and it looks exactly like that. But it comes with a letter of authenticity, and I forget the name of the place now. It was here in Toronto, and it was a memorabilia like official sort of kind of place, and it was really, really cool. So that's really cool indeed. So I'm a big Harrison Ford fan, always have been my entire life. And naturally, of course, Harrison Ford's two most iconic roles are Indiana Jones and Han Solo. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan, love the first three films. I think Temple is still my favorite. I have the most fun with it, obviously. But Raiders, I think, is probably the best Indiana Jones movie. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a bit of a disaster, but I'm excited. I mean, I just don't know what the fifth movie is going to be, and I don't. As much as I love Harrison Ford, he's going to be 79 this year. I always know his age because he's the same age as my father. They're born the same year, 1942. My dad's actually a couple of months older. My dad's birthday. Now, my dad, for those of you that don't know, he passed away 10 years ago, but his birthday is May 3rd. Harrison Ford's birthday is July 13th. So he's going to be 79. Now, that doesn't mean that he's decrepit and, hey, okay. I mean, he's still, but he's 79. And it doesn't really come to, my issue now is, let's not forget, he was playing to the gag of being older in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he was like 65. And there's a line that Shia LaBeouf says in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, says, I did that because I remember he's chewing gum and he's like, what are you, like 80? And then Harrison Ford's like, gee, thanks. And it's like, well, yeah, now you are going to be 80, you know, but the fact that they're playing to the gag that he's older in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which was 13 years ago, now he, you know, it's all about the believability. And, you know, the DNA, and listen, in James Mangold we trust, right? He directed Logan. He delivered an older Wolverine, I guess, or Logan, whatever you want to call it, right? But Hugh Jackman wasn't playing somebody who was 80. Hugh Jackman still was able to be physical. Not that you know, it's more believable. There's a difference between being older like 50 and older like 80. You know, there's a big difference there, right? So are they you know, a big part of the Indiana Jones franchise is keeping that DNA, keeping that swashbuckling, you know, adventure, you know, punches throwing, whips cracking, running, jumping, leaping. And it's like, that's Indiana Jones. What is this fifth installment going to be? Is it going to be more of a spy thriller where Indiana Jones uses more of his intellect than he does his brawn? I mean, you know, look, winning solves everything. And if it turns out to be a fantastic movie, then it's a fantastic movie. You know, I mean, clearly they're going to have to play into his age even more, you know, and maybe they will. But these are the things that you think about, right? You're like, do I believe that he can go up against bad guys and handle his own and punch and throw and jump and leap? I mean, are we? And if you don't have him doing that in the movie, like, I mean, it's like, what's he doing? You know, I mean, it's just hard. It's sad. But the next Indiana Jones movie should have happened 10 years ago. You know, and I quite frankly don't understand why I mean, yes, it didn't, I mean, it still made over $700 million at the box office in 2008 worldwide. It was nearly $1 billion movie. I mean, not quite, but I mean, still $700 million in 2008 was pretty fucking good. I don't know. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I think her name is. Again, I'm not familiar with her. I'm becoming familiar with her now. Exciting. I saw Darren earlier in the chat said, I think she's probably, you know, he thinks that maybe she'll play the villain. Maybe. Although we had a female villain in the last movie. Cate Blanchett, of course. Of course, you know, you might want to erase that movie from your palette. I get that. But certainly we have had that movie, or we have had a female villain. Are they going to do it again? Maybe they will. That would be cool. I'd be down for that. You know, I'd be down for that. I don't know. Or maybe she's going to play his younger sidekick, you know? I don't know. But you can never go wrong with putting talent into a production. So of course I'm looking forward to it. I mean, as of right now, it's probably my most anticipated movie of 2022. Although I'd have to take a look at the list of what's coming out. I want it to be good, but there is that hurdle. There's the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is Harrison Ford's age. And then once you establish that, you then go, okay, well, what kind of story is this going to be? Is he going to be, because it's going to be harder to believe that he can be the same. If Harrison Ford is like beating the shit out of guys in this new movie that are 40 years younger than him, it's going to be harder to believe. But then at the same time, you don't want him always using his intellect and cheap tricks and cheap gags that just he gets out of the skin of his teeth because he's able to use, you know, the hammer that's there, or, you know, I don't want carnival barker cheap tricks that get him out of certain situations either. It's Indiana fucking Jones. You know, we should be able to see him using his whip and punching a guy in the fucking face and, you know, and leaping over whatever and smash, you know, and I don't know if we're going to see that. You know, or maybe Harrison Ford will get into the best fucking shape of his life where he's fucking ripped and chiseled but he puts on like 20 pounds and he's fucking jacked. I mean, you know, he looks like, what's his face? Of course, he's not as old, but he looks like, what's his face from Avatar and Don't Breathe, the main guy there. You know, he's an older guy, obviously. I think he's in his 60s, isn't he? Why do I always forget his name? Don't Breathe. Stephen Lang, that's it. How old is Stephen Lang? He's 68. He's 68. So a few years ago, he would have been like, when Don't Breathe came out, that was what, 2016? 2016. So 68, 7, 6, 5, 4. So he was about the same age as Harrison Ford was in Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I had no issues. That's actually probably, look, if we want to be realistic here, the age that Harrison Ford was in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which was like 65, is probably as old as you'd want to go. Not just for an actor, but for the character as well. Because when you watch that movie, you're like, okay, I still can kind of believe it. You know, when he's fighting the big Russian dude at the beginning of the movie, you're like, I still believe it. He's swinging from the fucking light, and it's like, okay, he's 60 and, you know, but I still believe it. You know what I mean? Now, I don't know, man. And it's hard for me, it pains me to say that, because I've wanted a good Indiana Jones movie since The Last Crusade, you know, and we got Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which, you know, there were certain little moments that were kind of endearing, but I mean, as a whole, it was just, man. And a part of the reason why it was like that, I'm going to tell you this, a part of the reason why Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was, yes, Shia LaBeouf hanging from the trees like Tarzan. I get all that. And some people hated the aliens. Okay. But one of the reasons, and I've said it before in the past, is the lack of gritty, sweaty, physical violence. You know, I think Harrison Ford had his leather jacket on the entire fucking movie. CGI ants and the fights were very tame. And why? Well, probably because he's 65 years old. I don't know, but I'm sure that was part of it. He's not 39, you know? I wanted more grit, more. I never felt that Indiana Jones was in any real danger. I didn't see him sweat. I didn't see him. I mean, no, that's not true. He had his jacket off at the beginning of the movie. And I think that's probably why the beginning of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the whole him there with the I didn't like the color grading though. The color grading in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull at the beginning of that movie looks like a weird, like they're on set against a green screen. It's weird. This teal, it looks fake. I didn't like it. But anyway, why they do that? But the beginning of that movie with Indiana Jones, you know, in the warehouse and hanging from the lights and the whole, that actually wasn't bad. Like, yes, it's modern and, you know, but there was some physicality there, right? You felt like he was getting out of, it was a little hokey and a little self-aware. I wish they wouldn't do that. I wish they would play it like Shakespeare. But arguably the beginning of that movie was the best part of the movie. And the chase scene through the streets on the bike. Now, obviously that's not really Harrison Ford on the back of that bike. That's a stunt double. But the chase scene again was very practical, right? You felt the practicality of it. It was a real chase scene with real cars, with real bikes, and, you know, a stunt double, okay, but going through, you know, leaping off the bike into the window of the other car. And it felt Indiana Jones-ish, right? But that's where it stopped, you know. I never felt like he was in any real danger beyond that. You know, it was, and now, like, what are they going to do? Maybe they'll turn into a spy thriller. Maybe they will. And maybe Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I think that's her name, right? I got that, is going to, like I said, maybe Darren's right, play the villain or something. I don't know. I'd be okay with that. By all accounts, she seems to be very intelligent and capable. But there's not much more I can say. I'm going to keep going around and around and around in circles until we know what the story's about. Once we know what the story's about and what the script is, then we can pontificate, if you will, or, you know, we can speculate more so on maybe what we can expect based on that information. Once they release a synopsis or a log line at the very least, we can then sort of speculate on what we might be able to expect from the Indiana Jones character based on this scenario. Because then you can look at the scenario and you can go, well, what is likely this character going to, what are the things that are likely to pop up based on this scenario and how they're going to handle it, right? Like if you read a scenario where it's like, says something like Indiana Jones fights for justice on a train, carrying executives from a such and such and a missing girl, and then you kind of go, I can see that being a spy thriller. Like I can see that being very sort of, you know what I mean? But if you hear something like Indiana Jones globetrots to the jungle of Chamamimi to uncover the lost, whatever, against the backdrop of snakes and epic this, or it sounds like fucking King of the Crystal Skull. But you know what I mean, right? Like if it sounds more high octane, then you're like, oh, maybe there's going to be some, you know what I mean? It'll be interesting to see what that synopsis is, what information or what lack of information is in there, and then we can kind of talk about it a bit more. But I'm excited that we have this actress who's apparently been cast. It makes me feel good because it makes me realize that this is moving forward. Slowly but surely, we are moving in the right direction for those of us that wouldn't mind seeing Harrison Ford one last time as Indiana Jones, arguably his most famous role, for sure, because it's all his. Yes, Han Solo is arguably his most famous role, but that's not just his, right? You got Luke Skywalker, you got Princess Leia, you got Darth Vader. There's arguably so many more interesting, likable, and favorite characters other than Han Solo. But Indiana Jones, it's all his, baby. It's all his. It's all his. It's why you go to see Indiana Jones. It's because of him. You don't necessarily go to see Star Wars just because of Han Solo, right? Anyways, those are my thoughts, folks. Those are my thoughts on Saw 10 and the bit of Indiana Jones 5 news we got today. Let's go over to the chat room and see what you guys are saying. I think a super chat came in, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Bud Gumperson sends in $5.67 US and says, hey, Dave, what scene did you let the executive producers on IMDb, it's me, Billy C, being filmed, if you can say? Well, I can't say that. What I can say is because of COVID-19, ideally, we would have loved to have been able to, have them come to the set and all that kind of jazz. What we couldn't do that for safety reasons and practical reasons, and the borders were closed and things like that. So it was a Zoom call, and they got a tour of the set, got to speak to the actresses and the crew, and it was during a break. So they didn't get a chance to see a scene being filmed per se, and they were okay with that. They understood that because of the practicality of the shoot, the logistics of the timing of the shoot, in terms of the schedule. But it was about, I think it was about a 45-minute Zoom call, if I'm not mistaken. It was quite lengthy. And I did it on my phone, and I walked around the set and gave them the tour of the entire place, and stopped in to speak to the ladies and Bruce and the rest of the crew, and showed them some things that would definitely be considered spoilers, for sure, that they got a great kick out of, and a lot of fun. So just had a ball, and I know that they appreciated it very much. We did what we could do when faced with this kind of a scenario. You know what I mean? And yeah. So thanks very much for the super chat, though. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Let's see. What else are you guys saying? What's going on here? What do we got? What do we got? I am the best 237 says, Dave, have you seen Can't Hardly Wait with your girl, Jennifer Love Hewitt? Pretty underrated 90s movie. Yes, I have seen Can't Hardly Wait. I saw it when it came out. It came out in 1998, I believe. And I don't recall seeing it in the theater. It seems like a movie I would have seen in the theater. And now I'm asking myself why I didn't see it in the theater. But I don't believe I did. But I do remember watching it at home. And yeah, of course, the only reason why I was watching it was because of Jennifer Love Hewitt. And I agree with you. It is the 90s. It is, well, one of them up there with like Clueless and things like that. It is one of those 90s movies that would be the equivalent of like a 16 Candles or a Pretty in Pink. And I don't mean it's the same story. It's not the same story. But it's that high school, The Breakfast Club. It's that high school age, very, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, The Breakfast Club, very 80s, very much of their time, right? Very much of 80s high school and, all that. Clueless, Can't Hardly Wait, very 90s, and that's what I mean by that, right? I could relate very much to the things in Clueless and in Can't Hardly Wait because I was in high school in the early to late night or to mid to late night. Early, I guess. I went to high school in 94. I should have gone in 93, but I failed grade 4. For those of you that don't know, I was held back. I failed grade 4. So I would have started high school in 93, but I had to start at 94. And Clueless was 94 or 5. And Can't Hardly Wait, I think, was 98. So, yeah, I mean, I loved it. But, I mean, for really only one. And you know what? Objectively speaking, really, if you were to take Jennifer Love Hewitt out of the movie and replace it with somebody else, it's still a funny movie. It put Seth Green on the map. He's in that movie. The kid from, I forget his name now, but the kid from What About Bob, is in that movie. He plays, one of the nerds. It's funny. Very much of its time. I'm pretty sure high school kids today would watch that movie and be like, okay. You know what I mean? But a lot of fun. Hard to believe that movie's 23 years old. I mean, when that movie came out, The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, and 16 Candles were barely 10 years old. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of funny, I mean, they were over 10 years old, but barely over, So more time has gone by since Can't Hardly Wait and Clueless than had gone by since those 80s films when those other movies came out. It's crazy. It's crazy. Super chat from Jeff Harris, $4.99. Thank you, buddy. Says, hey, Dave, do you have a favorite DMX song or album? Sucks he died so young. Not my kind of music, man. So I can't say that I do. I absolutely have an appreciation for what he did for, the culture and his music and 100%, for sure. And I didn't know that he died. He must have died today. Did he die today? Let me just see here. I guess he died today. He's died at 50. Yeah, he just died now. Died today. That's too bad. My condolences to obviously his family, his friends, and not that they know me. They don't know me, obviously. But to his fans, to everybody out there who loved him. I can appreciate what he did for, obviously, for rap and for the culture and for that style of music. It's not my style. I don't listen to rap music. I don't really listen to hip hop, although there are some hip hop songs I really do like. But it's just not my style. If Bruce was here, Bruce would be the guy to talk to about this because Bruce is all up in that stuff. He loves that kind of music. So he'd be able to talk about it at length far more than I could. I don't know enough about him or his music I certainly know who he is and certainly remember him when I was a teenager but I'm not, I'm just not as informed. You know what I mean? But it sucks. It does suck. I mean, I get it. It sucks. It sucks for everybody who is a big fan, for sure. Dylan Holm? Is it Holm? Is that how you say it? Holm? I think it's Holm. 10 pounds. Thanks, buddy. It says, hey, I'm 20 years old and I'm starting an acting course in September. People have said that I've got the charisma and the confidence for it. I know it's not going to be easy, but that's life. Any advice, Dave? Well, I would say that you're taking an acting course in September. Study. Learn the craft. You'll soon understand that much of acting is reacting, very nuanced, I think having a certain level of confidence is good, but there's a big difference between confidence and arrogance. When you're good at something and you're good at something, the work will speak for itself. The evidence will speak for itself. So you don't have to oversell yourself. You don't have to overdo things. Just be you. Just be you. Go in there and let the work and let the talent, if you have any, I'm not saying you don't have any talent, and let your talent speak for itself and let the chips fall where they may. But listen, pay attention, make friends. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to meet some of the best stuff that's going to come out of taking acting classes, any kind of acting class, is not necessarily just the information, which can be proved to be very valuable for you down the road, but it's the connections you'll make. It's the friendships that you'll forge. It's the people that you'll connect with and meet that you may meet down the road and other things. I mean, we know that Robin Williams and Christopher Reeves met years before they were Robin Williams and Christopher Reeves, right? They met when they were studying together. So, you never know who you're going to meet and who's going to go on and become somebody. Maybe that's you. Maybe it's the person sitting next to you. You never know, right? So, there's nothing wrong with being confident. I think that's good. But just be humble about it. Be humble about it, right? Be humble about it. Because understand, and it's like this in voiceover, because that's acting too. There are a lot of people that can do what you do. There are a lot of people that are just as, if not more talented, charismatic than you. That doesn't mean that you're not charismatic and talented. Doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean you're not one of the best, that you may not be one of the greatest. But there's a lot of talented people out there. Now, there's a lot of non-talented people out there as well who try, and unfortunately, they just don't have talent, right? You can teach technique, but you can't teach talent. You either have it or you don't. I say that all the time. And I used to say that I used to teach voiceover. I taught a voiceover workshop at the Liaison of Independent Filmmakers in Toronto for almost 10 years. About 4 or 5 times a year, I would teach a one-day introductory workshop to voiceover. And that was one of the things that I would lead with. And sometimes you'd see the looks on their faces like it felt like, and I would say that as a reality check, just to understand that, talent, not everybody can do it all. Talent is a big part. This is a performing art, whether you're singing, dancing, tap dancing, acting, it's based on your ability to make the audience believe that you are great at what you're doing, right? So, not everybody can sing, not everybody can tap dance, not everybody can act, not everybody can do voiceover. So, it's just understand, walk into it with that mindset, understand that, okay, I believe that I'm good. I believe I have some talent, and I'm going to go there and I'm going to listen, I'm going to pay attention, and I'm going to see what, I'm going to put it out there. But just know that there's other great people out there too. So, but I wish you the best of luck, my man. I wish you the best of luck. I have confidence in you. I have confidence in you that you will succeed. And thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Really, really appreciate that. Let's see here. What do we got? We got Mizzy E says, yeah, the voice of Chris in Family Guy. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's Seth Green. Of course, Robot Chicken as well. Ben Tramer, 1978, says, 90s had great teen movies. Empire Records, I just watched last night, was another good one. Yes, that's right. Empire Records. What year was that? 93, 94? Hey, Google, what year did Empire Records come out? 95. 95. I remember I had the soundtrack to that. Actually, I think I still have the soundtrack to that movie. And I think it's down there on CD somewhere. Really good movie. I agree. I agree. Let's see. Cody Leach into the chat room with a $10 super chat. Cody, very generous of you. You didn't have to do that, of course. Appreciate that. Cody says, ugh, we're going to go back to yearly Saw movies, aren't we? Oh, fuck. I certainly hope not. I certainly hope not. I was just talking about that at the beginning of the show, and that I got to admit, I mean, I didn't think Spiral looked that great. It didn't look bad. It just, I watched it and I thought, okay, on with my day. There was nothing, I hate to admit it because I know there's a lot of anticipation around it because it's a spin-off, quote unquote. I mean, it's Saw 9, let's get serious. And it's got Chris Rock in an uncharacteristically different, he's known for his comedic stuff and his stand-up, and he's playing some, serious role, and you got Samuel L. Jackson in there, and it's supposed to be sort of like a copycat killer, and I get it. I understand that, okay, this might be interesting, but I gotta admit, the trailer, I didn't think was that great. I didn't think it was a great trailer. And I talked about at the beginning of the show, I said that, I checked out a Saw like 6 Saws ago, and now of course they're talking, I just don't get it. But people go to see it. Even Jigsaw only cost $10 million to make and it made $103 million worldwide. So $10 million is always your production budget. Let's say 30, 40 million for marketing. It made a little bit of money. Stop going to see these movies. If you don't like them, if you love them, well, then go see them. Like I said, I would never tell anybody to not go and support the art they love. But if you are like, oh my God, another Saw movie, don't go see it. I understand if you're a movie reviewer like Cody Leach, of course, that, he's got to see it because there's an expectation that he's going to talk about it. So I do understand that. But for somebody like me who's not a movie reviewer, I probably won't be seeing Saw 10 if it ever comes out anytime soon. But thank you for the super chat, Cody, my man, Cody. Great shit, Cody. Let's see here. Super chat also comes in from Gary Rangel, sends in $2, says, can we assume Tobin Bell is in it? In Spiral or in Saw 10? In Spiral, I don't know. Maybe there'll be some sort of surprise at the end of Spiral that Tobin Bell makes his return, or maybe there's one final phone call. Maybe that's why the phone calls in Spiral are so the complete opposite of what you expect when it comes to the voice of Jigsaw. So they get you used to this weird, different voice throughout Spiral. And then maybe at the end of Spiral, there's a phone call and it's the voice of Jigsaw, and it's like, hello, did you want to play a game? I can't do his voice, obviously. I'd have to listen to it to try and, but it's that kind of style, right? It's in that vein, right? And maybe that's what you hear, and you're like, oh, that's Jigsaw! He's back, baby, he's back. And they leave it on a cliffhanger, which makes you want them to continue it on and do a Saw or a Spiral 2. And I don't know. That would be my prediction. Or is he going to be in Saw 10? I have just the idea. Of course, it won't be called Saw 10. It won't be called that. You want to know why they got rid of that? Years ago, they'd be like, part 2, 3, 4, 5. They got rid of calling it numbered films because of the psychological effect it has on fans, because of the silliness of the way it sounds. This isn't the only reason, but this is one of the reasons why film series stopped saying, part 7, 8, and they started to go with subtitles instead, because psychologically it's not as taxing on the brain. It doesn't sound ridiculous. Halloween 38 sounds fucking ridiculous. Sounds insane. Friday the 13th, 13. I guess that's a bit different because it sort of plays into the idea of 13, but yeah, you know what I'm trying to say, right? A Nightmare on Elm Street 17. It sounds silly. It sounds silly. They play into that gag in Back to the Future Part 2 when Marty McFly is in the future and he looks to the movie theater and it says now playing Jaws 19. Why do you think they did? There were only 4 Jaws films. They could have said Jaws. They play into this stupid, idea of these numbered films going on and on and on and on. You know what I mean? It's just funny. It's funny, right? So they stopped doing that years ago. But that doesn't mean that it's not Saw 10. It is. Just because you don't see the number there doesn't mean that it ain't there. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, Troy Grubb sends in $4.99 super chat. Thank you, Troy. Says, what is your favorite sequel of all time, Dave? Hope you are having a great day, buddy. Thanks, Troy. I am. Hope you are too. My favorite sequel of all time? Oh, maybe The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, I think it's not just one of the greatest sequels of all time. It's one of the greatest movies of all time. In that genre, the fantasy sci-fi. I really like Jaws 2. I mean, it doesn't hold a candle to Jaws 1, in my opinion. But I do like Jaws 2. I think it's a solid sequel for what it was. I mean, considering there was so much toxicity on set between Roy Scheider and the director, and there was a lot of drama on that set, and you were never going to recapture the magic of the first one. Jaws 2, I think, actually is not bad. It's not bad. But that could also be because Jaws 3 and 4 are trash. But anyway, so Jaws 2, Empire Strikes Back. I do like Halloween 2. I mean, I do. Godfather 2 is fantastic. Those are some right there. Victor Charlie sends in $5. Thank you, Victor. Says, Dave, I hear the realist tone of your voice when discussing Harrison's age and knowing he won't be around forever. Oh, I see what you're saying. I feel that same about Sly Stallone. Guys, and gals, and everybody else out there. Listen, I've said this before on this show. I'm going to say it again. We have to be prepared, folks, that, some of our favorite actors, especially male actors, I mean, there's a lot of legends and icons. And I don't like the way that the word legend is tossed around so arbitrarily. Everything's, everybody's a legend and, everything's iconic. And it's like, no, stop. It's so, I think the term legend and icon should be reserved for specific people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Ashton Kutcher is not a legend nor iconic. All right. Just say not everybody who's well known or famous is a legend. I wouldn't consider Jack Black a legend. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a certain status I believe one has to achieve culturally, globally, pop culture. It goes beyond the threshold of just being well known and famous. But it's tossed around so loosely nowadays. But what else is fucking new? Anyway, icons, genuine icons like Clint Eastwood, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Actually, I think it's how you say it. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Harrison Ford and Michael Douglas, and I mean these are legends in their craft. These are legends in their fields, and they are all over the age of 70, a few into their 80s and 90s. And, over these next 10 years, we have to be prepared. And Spielberg, Lucas, Scorsese, I mean, those three filmmakers alone, Ford Coppola, especially those three filmmakers alone changed pop culture, changed cinema, changed technology forever. Now I often joke and I say that, and I stand to be corrected, but I believe Steven Spielberg's mom lived to 97. And I think Spielberg's dad is still alive today at like 102 or something, or 103. So Spielberg's 74 or 5. So if the genes fit, as I always say, and that's genes with a J, or genes with a J, genes with a G, then Spielberg may be around for another 30 years. Who knows? But I mean, it's crazy to think, that we are going to be losing, it's just life. I mean, the probability that Spielberg, Ford, Scorsese, Lucas, Douglas, Eastwood, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, I mean, that they're all going to live to 95? No, I mean, it's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? You're already on borrowed time, especially for men when they hit 70, and so it's sad to think, we will be losing. And then you could turn to music too. There's a lot of music legends that are up there. Your Elton Johns and your Rolling Stones, your AC/DCs, your Led Zeppelins. I mean, they're not singing anymore, but a few of the members are still around, and there's a lot. Yes, it's going to be, now obviously they're not all going to die at the same time, but it is crazy to think that over the next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be some legends that go, and it's sad, man. It's sad. It's crazy to think. It's life. But then again, we're all getting older, right? We're all getting older, and as I often say, it's the only solace I take in getting older. It sucks. It sucks to look at yourself in the mirror and go, wow, I have gray in my beard. You know what I mean? It sucks. Or that I got, I'm tired, or I ache a bit more, whatever. It sucks. But at least all my friends and the people I love, we're all getting older together. So we're all getting gray together, and we're all getting wrinkly together, and we're all like, at least it's not just me. You know what I mean? At least I take comfort in knowing that at least we're all on this journey together. But yeah, it does suck. It does suck, man. It does suck. Thanks for the super chat, Victor. Really appreciate that. Tony Scott says, hey, Dave, I want to play a game. All right, Tony, play the game, my man. Play the game. Let's see. Ben Tramer, 1978 says, De Niro has ruined his career. I think he could have retired from film and public life altogether and kept his legendary status, but didn't. I disagree. I do agree with you, though, that he's done some stinkers. De Niro has gone on and done some really bad movies, stupid, silly comedies and fart movies. I don't know why he does it. But I don't think his status has been ruined as one of the greatest actors in the history of cinema. I don't think that is at all. I disagree with that. However, having said that, I do think that, but you could say the same thing about Daniel Day-Lewis, and you could say, well, Daniel Day-Lewis is cheating. What kind of fucking guy comes in, does one movie every 10 years and is considered the greatest? It's like, well, yeah, I could be the greatest too if I did one movie every 10 years that all happened to be so good. I'm not saying he's not great. Daniel Day-Lewis is a terrific actor, one of the greatest, of course. But he also doesn't have the filmography to also have some stinkers. If Daniel Day-Lewis, naturally, the more movies you do, the more films you act in, inevitably you're bound to have a performance that sucks, or that's not that great, or a film that's a stinker. Right? Well, he rarely has that because he does one movie every decade. Obviously, it's not exactly right, but you know what I'm saying, right? Right? So, if most actors played their cards right, chose scripts wisely based on, the material, the people attached, really played their game wisely and their craft well, and did one movie every 7 or 8 years, and because they played their cards right to set themselves up to give them the best probability of success in terms of what the movie is about and the structure and all that kind of stuff, yeah, then it's likely that if they did that they too would have most movies they were in their filmography be great. So De Niro, but most actors in Hollywood, obviously, not everybody, but most actors it's more about quantity, paychecks, and as you get older, maybe you don't care as much, they don't care about the same things you care about. But certainly, yeah, that's, you could reverse it and say, what's Daniel Day-Lewis running from? Why isn't Daniel Day-Lewis in one movie every year? The last movie he was in, no, it wasn't Lincoln. He was in one after that. He was in Lincoln, and then he was in one after that, I think. And then he retired. He's retired officially, but he's also retired like twice already too, I think. But anyway, but I know what you're saying. Boston Kennedy says, did you see the deal with Sony and Netflix? I did. I saw it. I don't have a lot to say on it. It's interesting, obviously. Sony doesn't have a streaming service yet. So I understand why they may have made that move. It's interesting. Like, I read things like that and I'm like, okay, cool, interesting. But I always like to wait for more information to come out, or just kind of see how it plays out over the weeks, months, and years, and see where we are. It's, in my estimation, it's still kind of too early to get nitty gritty into the details, but it's interesting. It's interesting. That's one of the reasons why they think that, well, yeah, it's interesting. I'll just say that. It's interesting. Tiffany Moses Shante. Dave, what are your thoughts on Demolition Man? I adore Demolition Man. I saw Demolition Man in the theater when it came out in 1993, and I liked it a lot. I do. Yep, I like that. I believe it was Sandra Bullock's first movie, if I'm not mistaken, because it was a year before Speed. I think that was her first movie. But yeah, I love it. It's great. But I still haven't figured out the 3 seashells thing yet. If anybody can let me know how the 3 seashells work, by all means, let me know, and we'll figure it out together. Machete Slasher says, "Hey Dave, what are your thoughts on Krugerzilla? Never heard of this. If you don't know who that is, it's basically Freddy Krueger transformed into Godzilla, making Krugerzilla. I've never heard of this. Is this a concept, a show, a movie, artwork? I've never heard of this." Evil Alex says, "Dave, did your father meet Harrison Ford or Kurt Russell?" No, he did not. "What are funny stories he told you about meeting big stars? Sorry to hear that he died too soon. Sounded like a great father." Oh, he was great. Yeah. Well, he passed away from a heart attack in 2011. My dad was, he spent most of his life in sports. My dad was a sports writer. Well, he didn't start in sports, but that's where he sort of fell into throughout the late 60s, all of the 70s, all of the 80s. It wasn't until 1990 when he switched newspapers and they gave him, actually, no, it was probably more, yeah, it was early 90s when they gave, when they allowed my father to then go back to a general interest column where he could write about sports if he wanted to, but he could write about anything. But through all the 1960s and early 70s, my dad was a columnist, a journalist, before he then moved over to what was known as the Canadian Magazine. It was a huge national magazine. It's no longer around, but it was big. And that's when he started to do sports, but not sports in like the way you see, not sports in the sense of like, so here are the scores, 5-4, 3-2, 2-1, not that kind of thing. My dad wrote feature editorials on sports athletes. And he met, all sorts of athletes. I'm trying to think of some of the stuff that he would have told me. There's so much. I can't think of any funny stories off the top of my head, but I do know that, well, here's a funny story that just popped into my head. I remember my dad said, he told me a story about how he was meeting with the head of the Canadian Space Agency, and he had gone into the meeting. This is back in the 80s, I think, because it was in Ottawa, because Ottawa is where I grew up from the time I was 10 to the time I was 20. Ottawa is Canada's capital, so it's our Washington. And my dad was meeting with the head of the Canadian Space Agency there, and he walked into the office and he was interviewing him. And as he was leaving, he dropped his pen. My dad dropped his pen. So he bent over. This is what he told. This is what he tells me. He bent over to pick it up, naturally, and the seat of his pants ripped, like ripped open. And the guy, I forget the guy's name, but this guy, this big important guy, the head of the space agency, didn't say a word. And my dad just picked up his pen and walked out. And he, of course, walks out and it's lunchtime. And he says, I walk out into the hall of this building and everybody is walking back and forth now because it's lunchtime. People are going out to get their lunch. And now I got this big, gigantic hole in the seat of my pants where my ass is, right? So my dad had to untuck his shirt and let his shirt fall over his pants to hide the, Anyways, it was just funny. And I'm like, I said to him, so do you think this guy didn't know that you ripped your pants? He's like, Dave, it sounded like, how could you not know? I was right there. I turned, he was watching me leave the office, it's like, how could he not know that I had ripped the seat of my pants out? Right. And it's like, oh my God. I'm like, were you wearing pants that were too small or something? He's like, no, I don't know. I just ripped I don't know. Yeah, they were like, khaki pants or dress pants or something. Like they weren't jeans or anything, obviously. I mean, geez, if you're ripping the seat of your pants out that like denim, then you got a real big problem because denim is so strong and thick, right? No, these were like thin khaki pants or dress pants or something like that. And I remember just laughing, thinking, oh my dad had a ton of stories like that kind of thing. Not ripping the seat of the pants out, but amazing stories of meeting all sorts of people, athletes and from football to baseball to hockey to, it was incredible. I remember like my dad, when my dad in the early 90s covered the Mike Tyson trial. I remember as a kid talking to my dad on the phone, and he would tell me he was there in the courtroom during the Mike Tyson trial. And I think he was behind glass, though. I think there was like a section for the reporters, and he was behind glass looking into the courtroom. I don't think he was right in the courtroom. But they were like right there. Essentially, he was in the courtroom. And I remember talking on the phone to my dad. I forget where it took place, but he was there for however long it lasted. He was there. And I remember talking to him on the phone, like, what's Mike Tyson like or whatever. And he couldn't meet him, obviously. I don't think. I don't think he was allowed access, but just like, seeing Mike Tyson. Now, my dad, of course, was at a lot of Mike Tyson fights as well. There's a famous photo of Mike Tyson knocking out Michael Spinks. And if you look closely, I posted it to my social media. If you look closely, you can see my dad at ringside. And it's cool. Cool. My dad covered Princess Diana's funeral. I remember when Diana died, speaking of which, Prince Philip died yesterday or this morning or whatever it was. I heard about that. When Diana died in 97, I remember my dad going to cover that. And he flew to England, and he was there in the church, sitting pretty close to Elton John. I remember my dad saying that, and like, that's wild. You know what I mean? That's really cool. Because at that time in 97, my dad was back to covering anything at that point. So although that's not sports, he was sent to cover it. So that was really cool. I remember talking to my dad on the phone about that and that experience and things like that. And when he came home, it was like, oh my God, And so, pretty cool indeed, to say the least. I remember when we had, this won't mean much to my American friends, but obviously the CFL here in Canada, which is the Canadian Football League, which is kind of like it's at one time the CFL was bigger than the NFL. And in terms of like way, way back in the day, like the 60s, the 70s, it was huge. The CFL was huge. And then of course the NFL kind of just got rid of that. So the CFL is kind of like a farm league really to the NFL now. But nonetheless, I remember the head coach of the Ottawa Rough Riders, which was the CFL football team. We had him over for dinner. And I remember just thinking how cool that was. I was like, I don't know, 15 or something, 14. And he's sitting there and, and it's just like, it's so weird, like what the hell is the coach of but you know what I mean? That's what I remember sitting in the press box watching those games where the football team played. I remember being up there, looking down onto the field, being in the press box with all of the reporters and eating all the nice catered food that they had up there. I thought that was pretty cool too. I remember going to the press box of some NHL games when Ottawa got the Ottawa Senators in 92. I met a lot of my favorite hockey players, Pat LaFontaine, Grant Fuhrer. I didn't meet Wayne Gretzky, but I did get his autograph on a hockey card, which is pretty cool. I still have it too. I should bust that out. So yeah, cool. A lot of story. It would take. I could do a whole show on it, but that's one funny story that I remember him telling me. I just remember thinking, my God, like the seat of your pants being ripped out. You know, like imagine you're like it goes well. You know, the interview goes well. The head of the Canadian Space Agency, you know, you got what you need. You turn around, you drop your pen, you bend down. Like, oh my God. Now, I don't know. I forget. I got to find out who the head of the space agency was at that time. But I'm sure he's probably fucking told that story for years. I remember this time when Earl McCrae was in my room and he turned around in the seat of his pants. It probably would have been better if he had said something. The fact that he didn't say anything makes it even worse. You know what I mean? Funny shit. Funny shit indeed. All right, 5 more minutes to go in the show. Did I miss any super chats? Let me see here. Let me go back. I don't think I did. Okay. Yes, Matthew Arnold sends in a $4.99 super chat and says, Dave, you were right about the movie Run. I watched it last night and it kept me on the edge of my seat. Thanks for the recommendation. No problem, my man. Thank you for chiming in and letting me know that you saw it. Wasn't that a great movie? It was so good. And that scene when she's at the computer and she pulls back, I was like, whoa! I was like, oh! Great rack focus shot. It like genuinely creepy. Great movie. Yeah, if you guys have not seen the movie Run, the 2020 film with Sarah Paulson, please watch it. It's directed by the same guy that did Searching. So if you liked Searching, which I really did, they're doing a Searching too. I don't think he's directing it though. But I really like that film. I think you'll like this movie. It's got some Misery, you know, isms in there, and the performances are great. The performances are really solid. I can't recommend the movie Run enough. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for chiming in, Matthew, and thank you for your super chat. I'm so glad that you liked the movie. That's awesome. Yeah, really good. I'm going to see if I can pick it up on physical media to like see if I can get the, you know, the 4K or the Blu-ray of that if they've released it, because I'd love to actually own it. I think it's really good. All right, what do we got here? Chester Franklin Jr. says, Dave, what's your favorite AMC Fearfest movie in October around Halloween time? My favorite of the Halloween movies. I'd probably say the same thing. You know what I mean? I mean, anytime they play any of the Halloween films on AMC, I enjoy. So, yeah, I'd probably say that. But any horror movie that piques my interest, you know, any horror film that piques my interest, I'm going to watch. But I remember one time, what spot was it? I've done a few spots that have aired on AMC. Now, not the promo spots for AMC, because that would be the promo voice of AMC, and I know who that is. Not know him personally, but I know who that is. So it, like, I wasn't doing things like, you know, next on AMC, like things like that. No, that's the promo voice of the network. But there was some, I forget what. I got to go back and look. There was some spot or a couple of spots I did. I remember I was watching AMC and they wound up on AMC, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I always like that kind of stuff. I forget what it was now though. It's a commercial for something. Oh, maybe it was, you know what it might have been? I did a couple of spots for this is going back almost 10 years. I did a couple of, I think it was this. I did a couple of spots for the Resident Evil 6, the video game. I'm pretty sure I've posted that spot that I've done on my social media. I think it was from like 2012 or something like that. And I remember I did that from my home studio. It was a studio in New York, and we were tapped in that way, and they wanted the movie trailer voice. So I gave them the movie trailer voice, and I think it was for Resident Evil 6. And I think that I did a couple of spots for that. I think those are the spots I remember seeing on AMC. And I was like, that's great. I love that. You know, it's always great when you can see your spots wind up on a big network. You know what I mean? So I think that's what it was. It's pretty fucking cool. I'm pretty sure I've shared those spots on here before, but I can't remember now. Jonathan Nichols says, Dave, have you seen Trick or Treat? Awesome Halloween time movie. Trick or Treat, not Trick or Treat, or Trick or Treat. It's Trick or Treat. Yeah. I don't think I have. I know the movie you're talking about, though. I do know the movie you're talking about, but I don't think I have. American Turkey Burger says, congrats on It's Me, Billy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, American Turkey Burger. America, yeah. Nick Townsend says, Dave, your thoughts on Roger Corman films? Well, let me just first, I want to get a specific couple of films because I want to get a couple of specific films that he's done. Okay, let me scroll down here. Ones I've seen, because I haven't seen all of them. So, okay. What ones have I seen here? Yeah, I've seen Piranha, although he's a producer on that. I've seen Piranha. Silly. Piranha was silly. Wait, is that the one I'm thinking of? No, it's not. I've seen Piranha. Obviously I've seen Apollo 13, but that wouldn't count because he's only an actor in that. Like, are you talking about as an actor or as a director? Because he directed a lot of films in the 60s and in the 50s. He started producing later and then appearing as an actor later, if we're thinking of the same Roger Corman. He was just a producer on that. When we go back to his movies early on, and like films he's directed, I have seen She Gods of Shark Reef, believe it or not. I actually have seen that. Wasn't really a big fan. I have seen Sorority Girl. I have seen that. 1957. I remember seeing that. I thought it was okay. Not bad. But I haven't seen a lot of his films. So, you know, I know who he is. I get who he is. I get his influence and status. But I haven't seen a lot of his films. Maybe 3 or 4, perhaps, I've seen. To be fair and to be totally transparent. Just looking at, no. Have I seen this one? No, I have not seen that one. I have seen this one, though, but he was only an executive producer on that. The Giant Leeches. So, yeah, you know, I mean, the films I've seen of his are like, they're you know, they're the old school monster kind of films, right? You know, and they're B-movie level sort of. It's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I've only seen a few of them. It's not like I'm a big Roger Corman fan and I've watched his whole filmography, but I understand who he is, and I understand that a lot of people really sort of like that kind of thing and really appreciate that B-movie aesthetic. But I've watched a couple of his movies. They don't do much for me. I'll just say that. They don't do much for me. What's your favorite one? If you can't comment here, comment below and let me know. I think we're overtime. Are we overtime? We are overtime. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for me here on episode 160 of MCRAE Live. Thank you to my great moderators, of course, Frank Riker, Tabitha Short, Darren Sands, and Chris Baber for doing what you guys do each and every show. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the non-super chat questions and to the super chat questions, of course, that came in. Help supports the channel. Really appreciate that as well. I will be back on Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Not just with Tony, but with Frank Riker, our great moderator, Frank Riker, who picked up that 2 Dudes perk on the Indiegogo campaign. He is going to be on 2 Dudes and Some Bullshit this Monday night, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are watching Psycho 2. Psycho 2 this Monday night. Make sure you tune into that. If you don't know Frank, you're going to get to know Frank, and I think you're going to love Frank. I adore Frank. It's going to be awesome. Really looking forward to that show. Have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend, ladies and gentlemen. And make sure that you stay safe out there. Stay safe. And yeah, let me know your thoughts below on Saw 10, the potential of Saw 10, and whether you like the Spiral trailer. Did the Spiral trailer do anything for you? It didn't do much for me. I got to be honest, and I hate saying that because I know there's a lot of people out there that are excited about it. Comment below and let me know your thoughts, and let me know your thoughts on this new and latest Indiana Jones 5 news. Interesting stuff. All right, folks, have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.